Hello and welcome to this presentation, a demonstration of the prototype data warehouse, which is being released with SeETL 3.1.02. My name is Peter Nolan and I'm the founder of Instant Business Intelligence. The agenda for this presentation is we will take you through this prototype data warehouse that we're releasing, this way of setting up data warehouses specifically for .NET Nuke customers. It's all released, it's all available. You can use the code that's already generated. If you want to maintain the code that's generated, then you would use our tools to maintain that code. But if you want to maintain that code by hand, of course you're welcome to. So we'll take you through the directory structure, the components of the warehouse, the location of the workbooks, the output of the workbooks, and give you a brief review of the tables and views that are in this data warehouse. Now, this is the summary presentation, so we won't go into the details in this presentation. The details will be in the next one. So this is a prerequisite for the next presentation. I won't be repeating myself too much in the detailed presentation. But we're releasing this set of ETL and databases to show people what SeETL is capable of. And it's also a little bit of a sales pitch to those people who are hosting .NET Nuke sites. If you are a hoster of .NET Nuke sites, you can take this information and roll out a business intelligence platform as an optional extra for your .NET Nuke customers. We will be providing a service of building data warehouses for .NET Nuke customers if they so like. We have a hosting organization called Keyword Consulting in Germany who would be only too happy to host your .NET Nuke data warehouse, right, for reasonably sized customers. So that's the agenda for the presentation, and we'll just go through that. Now, the directory structure is implemented to be able to take multiple DNN sites, multiple sources from DNN sites. It's intended to be used by DNN hosters to offer BI services to their clients. Okay. So if you are a DNN hoster and you have lots of customers using .NET Nuke hosting on your servers, like my hoster, ASP.NET, you can now offer an extra service of BI solutions for your .NET Nuke customers. Now you can build them, or we can build them, but the piece that you have is, if you're the hoster, you run the databases for these clients. If you want us to build them, we will. You would then maintain them, or the customer would be able to look into their database to maintain them. So if you're a .NET Nuke hoster, this will be very interesting to you. Okay. So the first thing about the directory structure is it starts out with IBI hosting. Now a DNN hoster may like to rename that if they desire, but we've got IBI hosting in everything. And it's just to say, here is the directory that we're using. We're using a C followed by 3 digits, C for customer, just one letter of the alphabet. So that means you have a maximum of 999 sites hosted on one machine, which is obviously more than you can ever do. You can vary the first letter on different machines if you like. So you have a total of 26,000 possible directory names to host things in. And I don't think any DNN hoster is going to have more than 26,000 BI customers. Okay, if you do, good luck to you, right? So that's the directory structure, the top level. When you go down in the directory structure, you'll see this sort of thing. And I'll take you over to a live machine in a minute, but this just explains where everything is. So the summary about what you will see, and when you go into the downloads, is you will see this sort of thing. Okay, we've got SeETL030, 2, and 3 because we've got 3 sources, and you'll see there is a stage and target under each of these parent directories. And then under the stage and target, you'll see the same directory structure. There's DDL for database, tables, indexes, stored procedures, views, functions, and the run stats DDL gets put in there. There's a workbook directory, and all the workbooks are in there. And when a workbook is executed by a command, the log for what happens in the processing of the workbook gets put into the log directory. Okay, so very simple. Workbooks there, commands there, logs there. You'll find a reports directory, and inside the reports directory are the standard SeETL ETL processing reports. So you'll find all the reports in there. Okay. There is a data directory with a whole series of different things: temp, work, permanent, FTP landing. Now you may wonder why we have workbooks again. This is because it's now possible to actually put data in workbooks and then want to process the data in the workbook to be loaded into the data warehouse. So these workbooks are for the definitions of the data warehouse. These workbooks are for workbooks where it is data which is to be processed to be loaded into the data warehouse. And that data, those workbooks may be FTP'd from some customer site. So you have the FTP landing area. What may land there is a workbook which gets copied to here, which is then loaded into the data warehouse. For example, solicitations is something that a customer could set up in a workbook of their own and then send it to the data warehouse to be loaded into the data warehouse if their data warehouse is managed off-site, right? Unload and backups of the database. So they're all the things that are in there. DML, there's a variety of things which are data manipulation language. There's the delta processing, so all the delta processing DML goes there. There's the row count DML, which goes here. There's the actual ETL processing DML, which goes here. And then there's manual SQL, which is written by whoever and put here, which can then be run against the data warehouse. And I'll show you some of these things now. And here we are on our development hosting site. It's an example hosting site. We called it IBI Proto 1 just to call it something different from our development machine. So we have a development machine, and this is not it. This has none of the development software on it. So the first thing you can see is, as I said, the AIBI hosting directory. So if you're a hoster and you want to host data warehouses, you would create a hosting directory. You see here is the one that we pulled the example out of, SeETL030 IBIWH. This is actually our web hosting service. So this database is actually our web hosting service. Okay, so if we go in here, you'll see stage and target, you'll see DDL, you'll see databases, etc. So everything that we just talked about on that slide, you'll see them in here. And here are the workbooks in the target. Here are the workbooks in the staging area. Okay. Down here we have SQL Server data, A hosting, so customer 1, customer 2, customer 3. So that's where the data is actually put. And if we go over here to SQL Server, we'll see, customer 1, warehouse and stage, customer 2, warehouse and stage, customer 3, warehouse and stage. Down here we see 3 databases. These are the 3 different .NET Nuke databases for the 3 different sites that we've integrated in this processing. And they of course live out on our web hosting service, which is discountasp.net. And let me give a plug for the guys at discountasp.net. They do a great job, and I've been with them for about 7 years now. So they're the 3 databases that get backed up, zipped, downloaded, unzipped, restored, and then are processed into the different staging and data warehouses. Okay, so that's just a very brief introduction because this is a summary presentation. Now, as you just saw, there are 3 source databases from 3 .NET Nuke sites. Okay, they are the IBI site, our company site, which you can go and browse. They are our IBI hosting service site, and we host a small number of very simple websites for people. My personal website is out on the IBI hosting service. And we admin another site, we'll call it the XYZ site. We admin that, and that's by far the busiest site of those 3 with about 120,000 hits per month and 500 registered users. As you saw, each has a staging area and a target data warehouse. In this version, the delta detection is implemented in SQL, and we'll show you that in the detailed presentation. Each of the 3 instances has separate schedulers, separate ETL reporting, and that enables independence of the ETL streams for clients. One of the questions that we had to face when we were developing this is for people who want to host BI data warehouses for multiple .NET Nuke websites. Should we integrate the ETL from the multiple sites, or should we leave it separate? Now, we did build a prototype with 3.101 which integrated that to demonstrate that you could unload data from 3 different .NET Nuke sites, the same 3, push that data into a single staging area and push that into a single data warehouse. And we proved that worked, with the one restriction that the ODBC connections only allow you 2,000 bytes for an varchar. Okay, so the very long fields which store HTML and things like that would get truncated in that instance. And that stuff is not very important for a data warehouse. So we did that example. As we were thinking about doing this for real and not just providing an example of what you can do, it became clear to us that the right decision was to have the ETL subsystems be independent of each other for the customers, because the customers will monitor their own ETL subsystem running. So it is the customer's job to make sure that the ETL subsystem runs, not particularly the hoster's job, otherwise that's what you will be always doing. If the customer wants the hoster to have the job of making sure the ETL runs, then I'm sure they'd be happy to pay them to do that sort of job. So each of the different ETL subsystems would run, and the control tables, etc., are all separate, and so each individual customer can see the progress of their ETL and only their ETL. Okay. Now, if a hosting company wanted to pull together the ETL progress from all the different things that are running, then that's not a particularly difficult thing to do. Okay. So we enabled independence of ETL streams for the clients. Now, there's no single target data warehouse yet, and we may develop that at a later date. So, for example, one of the ideas that we have is that there would be one pricing structure for a DNN customer that has his DNN hosting, his DNN data warehouse, and his own databases that nobody else can see, and a different pricing structure for customers who say, okay, well, I'm prepared to share my data in a single database if I get a cheaper price. Okay, I can understand that if I have my own staging area and my own database, that I have to pay for that. And if I share a database, share a staging area, and share a data warehouse, then I can pay a little bit less for that. So the option is there for hosting companies to have a single integrated data warehouse of customer data, or separate individual staging area data warehouses for customers. Okay, or of course, obviously, a mix and match of both. Now, because we thought about that, we added a thing called client keys, so that that would prepare the ETL for a single data warehouse integration. and we've carried those client keys through the ETL processing, and that's just a unique number to secure client records in a shared database. Each of the customers would be able to have separate reporting and analysis. So where do the workbooks live? Just so it's on a slide and you can see it, this is where the workbooks live, in stage and target. So workbooks for definitions, workbooks for data. Now in the detailed presentation we will go through what is in these workbooks, but at the moment we'll just tell you these are the names of the workbooks, and they're numbered so that you would read them in the order they are numbered in, and that becomes the directory structure order, and they are processed in that order as well, okay, when you are setting up the database. So, and there is a command in the commands directory for each workbook. So as you edit a workbook, you just double click on the command, you save it, you double click on the command, and it gets processed, right? So there's no more of the little 3-button application that we used to have. So for example, there's a workbook to link to the source views. This links the staging area to the .NET Nuke database, okay? And that's presuming that the .NET Nuke database gets delivered to the same server that the staging area is going to be on, such that joins to that database within the server. There's a set of views to extract data out of that database, and then there's the for DNN -1 tables. So to be able to do delta detection, you need the -1 version. So the database that was just downloaded and restored is the current version, and we store the -1 version inside the staging area. The D1 is for the delta tables. So you have the source, the current database, you have the -1, and it processes those to calculate deltas. You then have the staging tables proper. You have staging tables for loading data into. You have the SeETL control tables. So these are all spreadsheets that define tables. Then there are all the other objects that you need in the staging area. So these are things like indexes and views and those kind of things. Delta generation workbook, which we'll show you in the detailed presentation. Once you have all these things done, you need a batch schedule to process the data from the .NET Nuke database into the staging area through to the data warehouse. There is a workbook that's needed just once at setup time for key management. So you need to create some keys and you need to set your keys, and so there's a workbook for that. There's a codes definition workbook. There is an SQL statement loader. So all these things create SQL statements as well as a mapping spreadsheet, and these statements are actually loaded into the staging area as text into tables, and the SQL statements to be executed are treated like data themselves. So they are versioned and therefore secure, stored away inside the database. Nobody can fiddle with that, with those statements. And also every time they're changed, they're not deleted. The last one is said to be versioned off and the new one is inserted. Every time a statement is executed through our statement processor, it is also logged back to the database and linked back to the statement that was executed. So we have a very safe, secure, robust way of managing the SQL, which does get executed against the database, okay? And that is much more robust than just having the SQL in a file and processing it through some SQL processor from the file. And of course, the last thing in the staging area is the data warehouse mappings spreadsheet. You've defined all these things, you need to define all your mappings. Now obviously the mappings bridge between stage and target. So in the target workbooks, you have obviously the data warehouse data model itself. You have the other database objects required, such as indexes and views. And then you have the statement loader, which takes this information and pushes it into the, in this case, a staging area still. We decided to put all the statements into one place rather than have the statements in two different places. So this mapping spreadsheet bridges between all this information and this information. Okay. Now, what's output from the workbooks? A command processes each workbook, and I'll just take you over and show you that. Okay, here is our commands directory. You can see just the list of commands. You can see the number at the beginning of the command matches the number at the beginning of the workbook. Okay, we've given the commands slightly shorter names. So when you want to execute something, when you want to process a workbook, you just double click on the command. It will go process the workbook and it will put the result of the processing in the log. Okay, so here are the logs, here are the workbooks, here are the commands to process them. Okay, all very simple. So in the detailed presentation, you'll see I will actually just go and edit some of these workbooks and then double click on the command and you'll see it be processed. But that's in the detailed presentation. So when you run the commands, of course, it goes and puts information out into these directories. So for example, for tables, there are 786 items in the tables directory. All the tables are generated by SeETL. So here are all the tables. You can see the M1D1 type tables. All these table SQL is generated out of the workbooks, and I'll show you that in the detailed presentation. And so the output goes wherever you have directed it to go, and in the detailed presentation we'll show you how to do that. It creates tables, views and indexes, all the physical objects that you need to deal with the data warehouse. It also creates things like runstats SQL, row count SQL, delta detection SQL, etc. Data profiling SQL, generates all that kind of SQL. Almost everything that's needed is generated. Almost. A few views are maintained by hand as they are too complex or too many to put into a workbook. And there's a thing called AO8 stage other views and AO1 lookup views. And I'll just take you over to see those. And here is the file, AO8 stage other views. It has things in here like the work table for download item measures. And it's got a lot of joins in it. So we decided this was probably best put into this text document. If we go further down, we'll see the web portal. We'll see all the portal stuff. We'll see this kind of join where we've had to then go back into the portal alias ID, those sorts of things. And then there's the whole piece for the pages where we're taking the pages and flattening them out so that we can have a VM web page dimension. So you might want to go and look at this pages SQL. But it's quite deep and you can see how it's going down. You've got this large number of joins which are occurring. Okay. So with these very deep structures and large numbers of joins, it can be put into a workbook if we want to, but the value of putting it in the workbook versus the time and effort it takes to then maintain it is a little bit not worth it. Okay. So that's that one. Lookup views. These are views, we'll go down to here. These are views which are defined over various tables. There's quite a handful of them, and so a lot of the times they have this row number partitioning in them, and so we just keep this handful of views separate. no better reason than there's only one person who needs to know about these views, and that's the person writing the views for the ETL subsystem. So these were another lot that we decided wasn't really worthwhile putting into the workbooks. So having had a look at the output for the workbooks, let's just go take a brief review of the tables and views inside the two databases, the staging area and the target data warehouse itself. So here we are in SQL Server, on which all .NET Nukes run. We can see the three .NET Nuke databases. This is the naming standard given to databases at Discount ASP. You can see the tables. This is your standard .NET Nuke type database, 207 items. Down the bottom is the old forums, so it's not really 207. Okay, so very standard stuff. Anybody who is .NET Nuke familiar would know about this. So let's look at the staging area, and we'll look at the tables first. SeETL on a table name means it's a SeETL control table. We scroll down a little bit, we'll see staging areas for things like address and campaign dimensions, client security definitions, software key definitions. Okay, so these are staging tables that we can load data into, which would flow down into the data warehouse. And then we see the staging area proper for DNN. So STG DNN lists all the DNN tables. And we'll just scroll down past that because there's like 150 of them or something. And then we're down here with email address bounces, email connections, email solicitation cancellations, GeoCity blocks, GeoCity locations, GeoLike country who is. So this is some of the IP stuff, the IP address stuff. Invoice definitions, invoice payments, IP address work tables, ISO country codes. This is our list after processing of known IP addresses. This is all the addresses that have hit our website. Things like LinkedIn connections, list definitions, Outlook as in Microsoft Outlook context, parties as in the data model BI for all parties, the party and address association, the interests of the parties, what they like, what they're interested in, product definitions, response email transactions, return transactions and sales transactions, solicitation email transactions. That's solicitations via email. This is solicitations any other way. World city populations, world geographies, some staging areas. And then we're down to the _T1 tables, which are temporary tables. And then ZXT, where you see D1 and M1. ZXT means extract and Z to sort it down. So if we go to something like the forums, forums, everybody in .NET Nuke knows what a forum is. D1 is the delta, and so the last field on there is the delta indicator. You can see that we've put some fields on the front. PKSS number is primary key source system number. PK forum ID, PK means it's part of the primary key. DK means it's linked to something else. That's what we call a detail key. So group ID is obviously the RI key across to the group table. Okay, so that's how the D1 tables look. Of course, the M1 table, the -1 table, is an exact replica of the source table that's coming in, with, of course, our new column names overlaid over the top. So there's nothing added. So from the source table and the -1 table, the D1 table is calculated. So each run, this is truncated, and calculated from the data that's available now. And as you see, there's a whole lot of those tables. Okay, a D1 and M1 for each .NET Nuke table. So in the staging area, there's actually a D1, M1 for every table that you need to version. So obviously we have a lot of tables. We've got 625 tables in there, which is quite a lot of tables when you think about it. Going forward into the data warehouse, T means table, D means dimension, F means fact, so that's table dimension, table fact. And you can see we have tables for the IP address, the web forums, the hosting service, the web pages, and the portals. And these are meaningless names for tables within our data model. And you see we've got fact tables for invoice payment transactions, solicitations and responses, web downloads for measures, web downloads for individual items, forum posts, and web page hit transactions. So they're just the first few tables that we're releasing to the public. We can write more ETL for this, and we will be over the coming months. So they are the tables that are there. The TF are the tables which get set up for the data model and or have meaningless names for columns, etc. The ZVM tables are the lookup tables, so you can go down and look at those. You'll get the source code for those, you won't get the actual databases. And if we go into views, we'll see that in views we actually have things such as VM product, VM retail outlet, VM web client geography for dynamic IPs and web client geography for fixed IPs, things like that, VM web forum. So there are some dimension tables. If we scroll up, we see the fact tables like page hit transaction, forum post transaction, download item transaction. So in any .NET Nuke site, 3 things that you want to look at least are web page hits, download items, and forums, because nearly everybody runs a forum. Okay, you can click in here and you can see the information that's on the web page. Okay, web page hit. Now we're using our data models to do this, and so we have more information on there than what .NET Nuke provides. Okay, so just wanted to take you briefly over the databases and tables. We'll do it in more detail in our detailed presentation. And so that was our brief review of tables and views. So just to conclude, what did you see? What we're releasing in this version is an example data warehouse where we have 3 .NET Nuke databases where they lead each into their own staging area and their own target data warehouse. The delta detection is performed via SQL in this case. In the prior version we released, it's performed by doing insert updates into the target tables. So there was a full download, and then the C++ program did update then insert against the staging area, and so the new rows were inserted and the old rows were updated, and that version did not detect deletes from the staging area. Okay, so we showed you the directory structure, what it looks like. So when you download this, you'll see those things in the directory structure. We told you a little bit about the components of the warehouse. We told you the location of the workbooks. We showed you where the output of the workbooks are. And I just gave you a very brief review of the tables and the views. Okay, so that's been a 34-minute presentation, a fairly high-level summary presentation. We hope you found it interesting. If you are a .NET Nuke user, hopefully you found that interesting and start to think, maybe I could have myself a BI data warehouse off the back of my .NET Nuke site, because I don't want to be doing analysis against my live .NET Nuke site. Or I want to be able to combine other information with my .NET Nuke site, such as the mail outs that we do, which don't go out via .NET Nuke. Obviously, almost everybody does newsletters and product offers and things like that through some sort of mailing facility. We do offer an emailer. You can use SeETL to send emails out, so HTML with up to 10 variables substituted into the email. You can do that. Just connects to an SMTP server. As long as you've got an SMTP server that you can connect to, you can use our emailer to send out product notices or newsletters and anything at all, because it just does a character substitution in HTML for the variables. So a very simple emailer. So people will be sending email out via something not the .NET Nuke site. So the very first thing you have to do is integrate your .NET Nuke site information with your email. And your .NET Nuke site may not retain all your customer information as well. So for example, your .NET Nuke site may be pretty much a marketing site, and you may not require people to buy your products through the .NET Nuke site. If that's the case, your clients or customers will be buying your products or services via some other application, and that application has to have its data integrated with your .NET Nuke site. Okay, so our data warehouse is intended to be a central repository for all the data in any organization, and .NET Nuke is one of the sources of data for that data warehouse. We're giving you that piece away so that people can have a look into it, use it if they like, that sort of thing. So we've given you a kind of a brief review of what's available out there, and we hope you liked it. Thank you very much for listening.